Well, welcome everybody. We created an app called Take Me to Cache, and it's for taking websites offline on your mobile device. So just so you see what it's about, for a little demo we created a page where I can go into airplane mode, and now I have a button here. It says DNN-Connect on my home screen. I can click on it, and of course it'll ask me if I want to go online, but I don't want to. And now I have a fully functional information app about today's event. It has things like Saturday's agenda on it. Don't trust the numbers because it's just demo data. But it also has features, for example, like, it's fully responsive. I can rotate it. I can click on the picture. I get a light box. All these kind of things, which for a lot of apps which you would want to create, this would actually solve everything you need. Of course, there's more sophisticated things you can do, but in many cases, this is about it. So let's see how this works. So basically, we want to take websites. This can be single pagers or something more sophisticated offline. And we want to make sure that it installs nicely on the devices, that it can handle updates, because the kind of websites we create, like for such an event like today, there were changes in the schedule, and this has to be updated. And of course, we want to optimize the content as a web designer so that it works well on the mobile device. So we're going to test the demo. I'm going to explain some of the challenges to it. I'm going to explain how it basically works in HTML5, because the functionality, we didn't invent this. We just added some code to make it work better in DNN. And basically, our app is built into Sexy, but of course, if you want to do anything else with it, feel free to rewrite the code and do anything else. So what is it? This is the site I just showed you a second ago. And I really see a lot of potential for all kinds of sites. So events like this are a typical thing. You just need the app for a few days. Basically, while driving here, people may be in networks. They don't want to go online, but they need the address or something, or a phone number. Would be nice if they had it with them. But also if you have special exhibition, short time things, mainly information-based things, digital books kind of sites. We are working on a project right now for a health organization which sends people to Syria. And they need information on their cell phones, but they're not sure whether they have connectivity. And if we would create native apps, the cost would just be very, very high. And so all these kind of things. Another common case that I know of is there's more and more stores which try to be trendy, where they would give their people, the salespeople in the store, iPads or something where they could use it to consult the customer. And this too is more an information app. It's very often is the customer this profile, they'd like to show it to the customer so they look really high tech. And this is all stuff that would just be much nicer if it was on the device. And yeah, the core thing is it's certainly much cheaper, and there's many more skilled people who can create nice looking responsive websites than there are skilled people who can develop apps. So you can learn a bunch of things like Xamarin and things like that, or you can go this way. And what I think is really important is the fact that the customer can change the content. So, here's the simulated output on a mobile device. I'm running this on Chrome. But of course, if the customer felt like he would want to update this content and change anything on this page and just, the common things and say, okay, I need to quickly replace this picture with a different one, or I would like to move this button down by one. All these kind of things which are not very difficult to do. The customer can just go in and do it, and it's not a big deal. But if you wanted to create a backend so that this would end up in a native app and look like that, you would spend a lot of time. And here, the customer can go in and say, okay, no, it's the wrong picture. Please, let's take this picture, that picture. It's very, very simple. And of course, simple is cost effective. Yep, the online connection isn't too good here, so. And what I also think is very powerful is once you've created such a solution, the next customer that comes along, there's a lot of copy paste in that. So once you've done it once, you can basically sell it 17 times and maybe even charge the same amount. So I think there's also potential for just normal web agencies like we are just to optimize. Now this is not a new thing. Actually, the first time I ran over this was in 2012. So if you guys think this is like leading edge or something, no, you're late adopters if you're going to try this now. And Financial Times did it in 2012. And we then did a Christmas, we always do very complicated Christmas presents. The 2 socks that you see here were actually last December's Christmas present for our customers. And there we did a booklet with quizzes and things like that. And we had a QR code which would bring the user to the result. But we also said, well, he may be on vacation or something, because that's when he has time to do this kind of stuff. So he can quickly take all the results offline and the QR code will still work for him. So this is the address. If you want to give it a try, go ahead. I would just give you a minute now to just try it out. The network, of course, is famously, tragically slow. But do give it a try. What should happen is your device should be saying, whoop, I'm downloading now, because it immediately tries to take the entire site offline. For those that don't have the benefit of a mobile device or just wouldn't want it to take too long, I'm going to do a refresh here. And Raphael, how can I kill the cache here that would rebuild? Yeah, because I took it offline already. A refresh will not do much. Where'd I go? This one? Mm-hmm. Anybody quickly know where I could clear this? Probably not. That's an idea.
Press
Control Shift Delete. Let's try. Let's quickly just put this back in. We set it up in such a way that it will only go offline on mobile devices. So let's see. The fact that it's very slow now means the cache was cleared successfully. Data hasn't loaded yet. And over here in my developer console now, you can see that it's starting to process the application cache and slowly going offline here. So the visual on the right doesn't show this properly yet, but it's actually starting to download the site already on my device. And so you see it's building the website, and in a second it'll actually show a little loading bar to indicate that it's downloading it. And of course it's going to tell me that I could take this offline so that I would put it to my home screen. And this instruction at the bottom will of course adapt to the device because the instructions are a bit different everywhere. So let's give it one more second. So that's the experience the user has. It downloads the site and it tells them you can put it on your home screen. And one error popped up here. Yeah, there's a very strange thing in this network. I'll have to say that in a second, but the network changes the icon at the very top here in a really weird way, and it turns it into a funny URL. But it must be some kind of a firewall feature because it suddenly has an IP in it and it breaks something. So can you just maybe try to take care of that? Just take it out. It's really weird. I think it thinks it's boobs or something. I'm not sure. Must be filtering it. Okay. So the demo we have here would not go offline on a PC. That is important because otherwise we would have trouble updating it. So about DNN-Connect, things like that. If we would go offline here on the normal PC mode, then of course working with it would be very difficult. So See, now it says about DNN-Connect, and if this were offline, this would be nasty. It'll tell the user that he can install it. It, of course, provides an icon for home. It enables download. And it also makes sure, we'll look at that later on in detail, that if the site does update, that the device will know about it. And yeah, we'll go into that. So this is the setup. We have a DNN portal. It's a bootstrap layout, the content and the content presentation. So all of this that you're seeing, this is just standard to sexy sorting of list items, in-page buttons. This is all just normal, simple content. Same thing for like folding sections. Here, this is just normal features, normal HTML, boring stuff. So then the images get auto resized. That's important. Sorry about that. That's important too. So that these images, for example, on home are automatically cropped into this size. And that's especially important because you'll notice that we have some images that we need in different sizes for the lightbox, for example, or for the responsive look. And so that's all handled by normal skin and templates and content templates. So it's very simple. And then we created this app called Take Me to Cache. If you want to download it later on and give it a try, you'll find it on toosexy.org/apps. Just download it, install it, and it has little instructions built in. That was too fast. How to get started. So let's talk about the offline mode, the way it's done in HTML5. And the way it works is there's a text file called the cache manifest. I'm going to show it to you what it really looks like here in the live system. This is the cache manifest file. It's a simple text file, and it contains a list of every single file that should be downloaded in offline mode. For example, this is a slightly older version of DNN. It does not have the no follow on the link on the login links yet. So this cache manifest includes those as well. If for the customer that we're doing this, it's on a newer DNN. It has no follows on the login and register stuff, so those don't appear anymore. So it's just a text file, and it has to be included in the HTML tag. It has to be mentioned in the HTML tag of the page. That's how the browser finds out, okay, this can go offline, and then it takes care of that. So it gets the file and it starts getting all the resources just like you saw in my protocol, and that's how it is. And this is all very standard since about 2012. It just works. And as you also noticed in Chrome, when I would press F5, the thing completely refuses to really refresh anything because it knows I was told to cache all this, and it gets very, very fast. So we looked at the manifest file, and we already prepared this simulation mode here. The cache manifest is very picky. So now that one of the files failed, it's not going to work anymore. And it failed because we had changed the URL for the firewall to demonstrate it, but apparently the firewall doesn't do it the same for every request. Did you already fix it? Okay. So I'll just refresh it now, and you'll see the same behavior again, except that this time I'm expecting not to hit any errors. So there we are. Yeah. So now this all works just the way to expect it, and it will not retrieve anything from the cache anymore. If I visit the page again, it'll just work. So has to have really everything. And for example, the example that we have here is meant to train people in Syria. So the solution that we have is actually multi-language. It's in English and Arabic. So this too, all this must be included properly in all languages, and the cache manifest will contain that. That's why we have some very exotic URLs in here containing these kind of sequences. That's on purpose because, yeah, I don't speak the language, but that's how it works. And here's one important thing. It should only change whenever something really changes, because the browser will always try to first ask the system, what's the last date you have for the cache manifest file? So if, let's say, the content editor were on this home page and he would say, okay, I'm going to start changing this, then you don't want the devices to continually refresh loading everything. You want to spend a few minutes, fix everything, do it in all the languages and all that, and when you're done, then you can finally go in. So then you can finally go and say, now please update the manifest, because before that you'd have too many devices simply trying to refresh all the time. So, and in general, you could do this manually, and that's what people used to do in 2012. But of course, in a content management environment, this is not fun. So we created a script, which is basically a spider. It's a crawler which will index all the pages and assemble the manifest file. And there are, of course, things we have to manually add as well. Like if you use CSS sprites, who here uses CSS sprites a lot? Hands up. Okay. Everybody else, look at it. You should use it. But CSS sprites may be that they are not mentioned in the HTML source code because they're only referenced in the CSS, so the crawler cannot pick it up. So for that, of course, this is the admin tool for the manifest. For that, in the app management, you can specify this stuff. Now, depending on our wonderful connection speed here, this may take a moment. This is what I was going to show you. So maybe I would say DNN-Connect now, and then of course I would do it in another language as well. And I don't want to, just because I typed in now, I don't want the manifest to already update. So I'll do the Arabic version as well. And as soon as that's done, I would go and update the manifest. So we need a manual list as well. And the timestamp, that's really the critical issue here. You don't want to, because originally we were thinking, let's just have the spider always run whenever a client asks it, give me the current manifest. But that would always give it a new timestamp, even if nothing changed. And we also had the problem that the content editor may swap a PDF. And of course, there may be events which we do not know about that replace a content, and then it still should update the cache manifest. So I'm hoping, this is just terrible. Okay. So that's why we do it manually. We trigger it manually because everything else is simply not reliable. Okay, so we have a seed page. I'll show you that once all these settings finally manage to load. And then we have the script running, which will load all the stuff. Let me just show you that. Because of course we just downloaded the app quickly, and it doesn't want to open it in Visual Studio. So this is just a little bit of regular expressions to find out all the links that are in the HTML. Then it'll more or less go through all the HTML, it'll just, crawl it, just the way you would. And then there's a few rules just to make sure it only has a certain link depth. So if there's too many links, that is usually dangerous. If you have some recursions, maybe you have a link which keeps on adding something to it and you want to somehow stop creating an endless list. So there's a bit of filtering in here, but again, it's very trivial. And it then writes the cache manifest into a content item into the database. So that's every follow request has the fully cached cache manifest until I go in again and press the button. Okay, I finally have something. Okay, now I could also update. Yep, I can't write this language, so don't bother. Now I've finally done a wonderful update in all languages, and I'm ready to refresh the manifest. Once we're there. So this is what it does. It just gets everything, assembles the list, and if it's on the same domain, it follows it. We can also add files from other domains to the cache manifest. That is very cool because we can also reference files from a CDN without a problem. So for example, the script that we have, which tells the user how to add it to his home screen, that is a standard generic script that comes from a CDN. So you wouldn't have to host it yourself. We had to, because we had to translate it into other languages. But normally you would say it's on the CDN, it's on the special list of dependencies, and that's it. So here we're getting there. Let's go to the configuration. This would all normally just take a second if it weren't for this network here. So let's go to the app settings. So here you say this is our root page where it starts the crawler, and these are all the additional files that we want. And as you can see, it's mainly some, for example, the fancy box sprites, which are just some elements in the light box that pop up. So that's what it does. Seed page does all that. So let's see how it does the device install. Basically, we had the script that tells the user how to do it. That looks like this thing here with the bubble underneath. And here's the point. I mean, we're talking about a website which is installed on the device. To give it an icon, there's some headers we have to add, and we also have to add some headers that tell the device to remove the browser around it. You could keep it there, but it just doesn't look nice, so of course we want to get rid of it. And that's also very simple, and here's also the mentioning that we couldn't use a CDN for that script. So unfortunately, if the script updates, we're going to have to do a manual step there. Now what happens when content upgrades? So I just started doing an upgrade in 2 languages just a second ago. And when I'm done doing that, I will go back to this console here, and as soon as it's loaded again, I will say update manifest. This will take a minute or 2. And this, by the way, this is more kind of a developer mode thing anyways. I mean, this is a tool which is, you have to understand what you're doing. So we're showing the manifest here as well because it just helps you understand what's going on, and if something breaks, it's easier to follow. And you'll also notice that, in a second, here I'll show it to you in the other browser, that we added a comment at the bottom where the manual dependencies come in, just so it's much easier to understand why did this link make it into the system. So it's loaded. I will click Update Manifest. And this means the following. If up until this moment you would have opened your app on your mobile device and you had been connected, it would not update it at all. So let me go into connection mode again. I will go to this, and I should now still get the cached manifest because it has not updated yet. It's still working on recreating it. So it still got it. It did not try to download it. Nothing. And now it is, because this just got done. So this is pretty efficient. And now, so I had a content update here just for debugging, but we're probably going to hide this. We're going to make some more changes this next week, and then we will probably hide this because the content editor needs to press this button too sometimes, and this may confuse him. We just included all the HTML that was crawled to help the developer understand where the links came from. So we'll still do it, but we'll hide it just so things feel a bit easier. So it's downloading because we did this refresh. Everything is working just as expected, and it will then have those changes that it'll say now in the English version and something funny in the Arabian version. So we tried to automate it completely, but it's simply not possible. It doesn't fit the life cycle of content editing. So this is the best solution we could come up with, and I think it's okay. The content editor needs to understand that there are some implications to what he does, so I think it's okay. So let's look at a few tips just in general content editing terms. First of all, you want to try to keep your amount of resources small. This is a classic tip anyways, but if you have different JavaScripts or different CSS files on each page of your site, and you use client dependency, then you'll have different bundles for each site, which is not very effective. Because client dependency, of course, tries to create a bundle with exactly those files and only those files in that sequence as requested. So in general, try to put all your dependencies in your skin somewhere so that they are the same ones for your entire site. It'll just make life easier. Then try to use CSS sprites. Again, it's a general best practice anyways. Are there people in here that don't know what CSS sprites are? No, good. And just in general, because of the client dependency, you never quite know what it does. We're not absolutely fan of it. It has a lot of side effects, but just be a bit careful there. Always look at the result when you do an update if you turn it on. Then when you're resizing images, this is something where when we expect a website to go offline, we do it different than normally. Normally, we would try to give it the perfect size here and then open the perfect size in the lightbox. But that would, in an offline mode, force the device to download at least 2 pictures for no real benefit. So we figured let's just show the big picture here anyways, just to reduce the amount of data that client loads. The standard optimization where a small picture should be small doesn't make sense if I plan on giving him all the data anyways, so I might as well take the larger picture for the preview as well. And if you have anything that uses links that would show a picture that is not visible in the HTML, so URLs that you need but they're not in the HTML, add them manually. So for example, in a lightbox, you'll see down here we have the correct link in the picture in the page anyways, so the crawler will pick this up properly. If you look down here, so this is already the correct, resize this picture to 1000 by 1000, and so that'll be picked up by the crawler. But if you were doing some kind of a trick with your JavaScript to open something else and the link is not in the page, then of course the crawler wouldn't pick it up. So what else? Just in general, this is best practices for mobile devices anyways. Try to not overdo the amount of pages. Try using like folding sections and things like that, but just to make it very easy to use. Use breakpoints because of rotating devices and things like that, that you can control your layout. Yep, so that's the basics. I'm going to look at some more advanced topics now just to explain what things don't work and where you'll run into problems. But are there any questions so far?
The wont files is something you wrote in the offline page. There was a page with the progress bar.
Yes?
It's not it's an enhancement or
Raphael, can you say the progress bar?
Yes, it's a script that I think that we wrote, and it's just there's an API for the app cache manifest where you can pick the amount of files it has to download. You can calculate per value. And
okay.
Yeah, but it's included in the app, right?
no, I think it's inside the skin here.
Okay, but we'll include it till Wednesday or so. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
You said that the deep of the crawling is only 2 levels.
Yep.
It's hard-coded and you don't plan to change it.
It's not a big deal. We could easily change it. Yeah. At the moment, I think it's in the source code somewhere.
You crawl external resources as well for 2 levels.
Yeah, here it's right now it's hard coded in the code. This link deepness here is, yeah. But it would be very easy to just move it to the app settings. Yeah, we can do that too, because then this line of code would just look a bit more like this line of code where it takes it from the app settings. So yeah, we can do that. Yes.
And is it right that, do I understand it right that modern browsers support some kind of an API, like a cache website, and then the browser looks up this manifest file and starts downloading?
Yeah, Raphael, can you enhance on that, or should I say something?
So the question is if there is an API for
Yeah. Do the browser have to support some kind of API like?
it's an HTML5 feature, and the browser has to support it.
I would say just about every modern browser today, I don't know, I guess maybe IE9 and 8 wouldn't do this, but they're usually not on mobile devices, so we don't care. But all the mobile devices have modern browsers on them, so you're good to go.
So you don't have to take care about the actual download process. Just trigger it by calling the API, and then the browser will do everything and cache the file that you have mentioned in your manifest file into the browser cache.
You don't even have to trigger an API. The moment it's in the HTML tag, everything happens.
But you have to trigger that the download or the caching should start.
Nope. So basically on our desktop version, we have to remove that. We have to make sure the attribute does not end up in the HTML.
But this tooltip on the bottom, this is something that you have designed, right?
The bubble that comes down,
Yeah.
that's a JavaScript, which tells the user to put it on his home screen. Yeah, that has nothing to do with the offline mode by itself. That's just a helper so the user knows how to add it.
Does that helper work also on Android?
Yeah, and it looks a bit different.
So
Yes, you have a solution for Android.
Yeah, well, it's just a generic JavaScript which creates exactly that bubble for each device. We didn't make it, we're just including it. Yeah.
So the website is cached each time I visit the page. I don't have to use the icon and put it on my home screen.
No, you wouldn't have to do
The
that.
website is cached anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So now if I would go on it in my browser and I would, yeah, in a second, but yeah, it's cached anyways. The moment you hit it, it's cached. Yeah. Yes.
You created all the content on the site with 2-second content.
Yes.
What if you put in a regular HTML module? Would it still work?
It would work the same way. It would be really nasty to create a responsive website that way, but if you're masochistic, go ahead. Yes.
At the moment, this is focused on offline mode and caching because you use it in your application.
Yeah.
But you could probably make an online version with the bubble and have an app on your phone.
Yes.
That would be a small part of the website and be online and need online connection.
Absolutely. If you do the exact same thing but don't add the manifest tag to your HTML, you'll have the same thing on a start page, no browser around it, and it'll be fully online.
Could you point it to, let's say, a portal that's only a small part of your website? And,
Sure. Sure. Very simple. More questions? Yes.
If we already develop a mobile app, for example, we use Xamarin.
Yeah.
And if you use embed browser, it works also. Or if you have just to add a view of part of your website on the already exists app, is it possible?
So I think your question is, if you had a native app and you would like to use the offline cache for 2 or 3 pages inside the native app. So kind of like Solaro made a kind of a app for the current event. You may have downloaded it, but basically this is just a start page, right, with a few links in it. And so your question would be, could we do this and then make sure that the links are coming from the cached site? I believe it would work automatically, but you'd have to try it. But I'm actually pretty sure it would work. Yeah. More questions? Okay, let's look at some harder issues and some limitations. So first of all, yeah, I already told you this, that we disabled it on the desktop, and we're just using a very simple regular expression on the server to figure out whether it's a mobile device or not. You can use any kind of detection you want, but we like to keep things simple. then these are things that are hard, but they work. Let's assume you had people with like tablets and they would be standing on the street doing a survey. They could collect data, they could do it offline. You could, with JavaScript, keep it in a little offline database on the device, and that would work. The reason why I say by trained people is these people will then, when they are online again, press certain buttons to cause it to synchronize. If you had an offline app like the one we just made for this event, and people would type in their answers, then of course I could do that, but the moment the app doesn't run anymore, it's never going to get the opportunity to synchronize because there's nothing to trigger a sync. And that's why I say if we do something for trained people that know that at the end of the day they have to synchronize again, it's okay. If we want to do it for anonymous people, it's not reliable. I wouldn't do that. Then 3D graphics, for example, that's something. So the question is, can we do 3D graphics? We have an example here where we created a store where you can rotate a ball on a web page. This is meant to, the customer can like upload his logo because he can print the ball. And of course he wants to see that, I love you, dear grandson, shoot a lot of goals, whatever, and he wants to rotate this. So 3D graphics in HTML is possible. But of course, the moment you would need server-side rendered new pictures, which we need for this, it wouldn't work anymore because of course you're offline. But a certain amount of 3D is possible nowadays with HTML5, and it's pretty nice actually. It's a lot of work, it's hard, but it's possible. Then here are some things that won't work. For example, offline customer feedback is not really going to work. That's what I was just saying, because they're not going to be reliable enough to hit sync again at the end of the day. Push notifications do not work. So for many things, it simply doesn't matter. But there are cases where you need push notifications, where the system must alert the user that something important has just changed. That's not going to work. There's just no clear API for that. And of course, device-specific stuff. It really depends a little bit there on the device. Some expose more information to the JavaScript API. Maybe they warn the user it's going to use your GPS. Do you really want this? That kind of stuff. So some things are possible, but it gets harder and harder. So I just wanted to quickly make a simple example, kind of like why would you want to use one thing or the other. So if you wanted to use PhoneGap, for example, I mean, basically you would also use HTML. And it's certainly more reliable if you use something that is embedded more deeply than what we're doing here. And there's just more control of what you can do. But there's limits to that too, of course. And this solution is very elegant, very simple, very non-techy. Of course, a lot of people think this is difficult, but it's much simpler than a native app. And for me, one of the core features is also the fact that I do not have to go through the App Store. I'm sure you can tell us more about that, but going through app stores, on one hand, it just takes time. Then in Google Store, I believe it's rather easy to get your app into it.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell us something about that.
Yeah, basically, our experience is that Google is no problem. You submit an app, 24 hours later is up, and they're pretty good. iOS is very difficult. You only have to make one mistake in description. They refuse it after 2 weeks, and you have to wait another 2 weeks, and customers will tear their hair out for something stupid. So yeah, you have to be very careful. But at the same time, practically speaking, for certain customers, you need to put this up, which means somehow you might need a wrapper. Is that right? Like the one we did.
You could use a wrapper. It's just that, at least for example, in the Apple specs for the store, I'm sure you can confirm that, they basically say if your app is just a wrapper for a website, they're going to refuse it. That is a standard thing.
Put things in, so long they can see what we're doing is innocent, and we're not going to change it. We're not going to change the content. Today it's innocent, and tomorrow it's pornographic, and things like that.
Yeah.
So I understand their reservation, but if they trust the developer, they allow it.
Okay. Because at least in the specs it says if your app does not really use any device features, they will refuse it. Now I assume the specs are a bit tighter than the implementation, but in general they say if all you want to do is HTML, then do it in HTML. Don't bother creating an app for it. Now it's apparently you sometimes get things through that way, but
it's
yeah.
difficult.
Yeah, and it can take weeks until you find out that they're not going to use it. So this is simple, no app stores. And the App Store also has the consequence that if the customer wants to sell something on his system, he has to pay Apple about 1/3 of the revenue. There's no way around that. So there are cases where this makes sense, especially if you want to benefit from certain payment systems that Apple would provide. But there are also cases where you want the end customer to pay something and you don't want to give Apple 1/3 of it every time. So, yeah. So, any more questions? Okay, good. I hope you liked it. I hope you'll try it and have fun. Thank you.